In a world that is screaming for acceptance, what if the most powerful response is to be open, real, raw, vulnerable? July 1994, at the age of 17, I was raped by a man 28 years older than me. In a situation where all I was looking for was understanding and kindness, I was made to feel wrong. My parents gave me a 7-year sentence of punishment for what they believed to be sexual misconduct. This 7-year term was based on the fact of their religious beliefs, along with the fact they no longer trusted me, which led to the removal of my rights as their firstborn daughter. My name was changed from Misty, and I was required to respond to being called Ethel. My mom stated she was disowning me because I was used and would no longer be wanted, trusted, respected, or loved by anyone. She reinforced this message by taking my 1-year-old baby pictures and tear them into pieces in front of me, informing me that she hoped that I understood that I was no longer her beautiful firstborn daughter that she adored. This made me feel shame, an incredible amount of shame for even being alive. I was excluded from all family interactions, including conversation over the dinner table. Additional table leaves were put in the dining room table to extend it to its full length so that I sat at the other end all by myself to visually create further exclusion. My parents did not believe that I deserved attention, love, celebration, or gifts, and did not permit me to have my 18th birthday. Birthdays were a really big deal in our household because this is when we got to pick what we wanted for dinner and dessert. This was also the only time that we ever received gifts. To lose out on an experience that you only got once a year was absolutely devastating. The feelings that came from everything that was mine being taken away from me made me feel like a little child. I lived on constant high alert as to what would be taken away from me next. This made me feel that life was dreadful and had no meaning. I had to go through AIDS testing every 6 months, even though the results were negative every single time. My bath towel could not hang next to my siblings because I was considered to have a disease that was contaminating. After 17 years of sharing a bedroom with my sister, I no longer could. My parents built a small room in the dining room, which I was given 1 pillow, sheet, and a blanket. This made me feel disconnected and alone. My wardrobe was reduced to 5 outfits with absolutely no accessories. I felt ugly and no longer looked feminine. All books, hobbies, and music were taken away and confiscated from my possession. I also was no longer allowed to have sweets, juice, purified water, or anything considered of high food quality. It was not enough to have been humiliated by being raped. I now had to endure the hostility of my very own family. I felt like a prisoner in the very place I should have felt safe. My fear of being authentic about my life was intensified because my mom stated that if I ever shared what went on in my childhood, I would be killed. I believed her because of how she treated me and my siblings. You and I have had different experiences in life that keep us afraid of being authentic. For you, the fear of being authentic might be to open up and discuss about your battles with depression, your suicide attempts, your challenges with addictions, abortion, lawsuits, bankruptcy, or an impending divorce. To be open, real, raw, and vulnerable about your pain, mistakes, challenges, and choices seems nearly impossible. How are you hiding in fear, shame, guilt, or regret? The struggle of being authentic is rooted in the fear of rejection. None of us desire rejection. let alone from our own family. September 1997, 3.5 years into my 7-year sentence, I desperately desired freedom. I chose to move out of my parents' home and leave without their blessing for not fulfilling this 7-year term. I intentionally moved to Texas to start my life over. Yet I lived deeply afraid, hiding the physical and psychological abuse that I had endured, which made me feel fake. Out of fear of rejection and being ostracized by my friends and church, I continued to hide the family secrets. Being raped caused me to have a deep fear of men. I lived protecting my heart by putting walls around it, to the point that I wore a wedding band on my left hand, pretending to be married for 16 years. This gave me a sense of protection between me and men. Not that wearing a wedding band actually does this, but it made me feel that I was off the market, powerful, and in control of my life and choices. But I was not authentic to my marital status. I could not be vulnerable. To be vulnerable would mean that I would have to open up and let you know and talk about the fact that my dad did not want me and my siblings, and that I could not relate to having parents that loved you. It would also mean I'd have to discuss about the abuse that I went through, not just from being raped, and not just from what my parents did with a 7-year sentence. This space of living and breathing in fear caused me to react to everyone and everything, which created a disconnection between me and you. This disconnection was because I lived with the fear of exposing what I went through in my childhood, and the truth was squelched inside of me. I lived repressed. I believed God had rejected me. I desperately tried to prove I was good enough. Maybe you can relate to having to feel you have to be perfect. As Brandon Hawk, one of my coaches, explains, we feel the pressure to be perfect. The only problem is that when perfection is the goal, we are not just setting ourselves up for failures, we are setting ourselves up for disillusionment and a lifetime of disconnection. I lived with the anguish from not being believed and from being completely rejected. By stuffing the memories and feelings that I had inside, I created a mask. Brene Brown, a famous professor and speaker on vulnerability, explains, in order for us to fight the feelings of not being able to be vulnerable, we have to allow ourselves to be fully seen. No matter what it is, no matter how it happened, no matter who's involved in our story, and no matter when it was. The process of me being vulnerable and sharing all the details about what I went through came from a traumatic experience in March 2013, when a client came up behind me and hit me in the head twice. This physical pain that I went through from the impact of his hand hitting my head hurt for hours. For 6 weeks, I wrestled with the emotional pain that this experience caused me, reliving the exact experiences I went through with my mom. All of this reignited fear in me that men could not be trusted. I vividly replayed the memories of my mom burning my brother's feet with matches, as she did 3 different times. I felt her hands around my neck as she shoved me up against the wall and screamed at me, "When will you use your head for something besides holding your ears apart?" My mom lived concerned that my dad was going to molest me and my sister. She didn't trust us to be alone with him. She created rules about how we were to act when we were in his presence. This made me scared of men in ways you would never dream possible. The replay of all these situations felt very real, like they were a movie stored in a dark closet that were now in my room and I could not escape them. I had no desire to eat, sleep, or work, and life was very difficult for me. All I could do was sob every single day. Life was so overwhelming. When I shared with church friends about this experience, their statement to me was, "What did you do to deserve that?" I once again felt I was not believed. This is when I decided I could no longer live like this. I would somehow find the courage to be able to embrace the pain of what I was experiencing and find relief for what was going on inside of me. May 2013, I began counseling for the first time, sharing my complete story in written and verbal formats. Coming out of hiding about what I experienced did not mean that I did not have fears about what would happen when my mom found out. It means that I consciously chose to not let her dictate any longer how I lived. What would happen if you quit hiding behind your mask? Being authentic begins with courage. Having courage doesn't mean that fear does not exist. It is just consciously choosing to act vulnerably. Courage to show the world the parts of you that you have kept a secret, to expose the feelings that you have buried, to escape and share the pain that you live with in your life. Deciding to no longer wear a mask and to actively remove the walls that you have built around your heart as protection. The choice to be authentic means that you'll do it not just when you feel confident or around certain people or in situations that make you feel comfortable, but you will choose to do it every single time. Let me emphasize, you will choose to do it every single time. My choice to no longer live in fear came because I chose to no longer let it stop me from how I was perceived, let alone received. By coming out of hiding, you acknowledge and encourage people to love you. You will deliberately make a decision to share the vulnerable truth of your story, and that the situation that you're going through is worth the true heart-to-heart connection more than any cliche statements or a mask. In 2014, at the age of 37, I began dating for the first time. I worked with a coach who challenged me to get over my fear of men by doing online dating. I openly shared what it was like to be doing an experience that most people had done when they were a teenager. I knew that to hide what I had been through in my childhood and why I was just now beginning dating at that age would only make the process that much more difficult. I would not go back to hiding any part of my life anymore. I was authentic and shared the challenges that I had, leaving a church group, wearing pants for the very first time, cutting my hair, getting earrings and wearing earrings, wearing makeup, going to a football game, watching movies, drinking alcohol, and things that everyone around me had taken for granted as normal. I no longer lived in fear of sharing my story. I shared what I needed to share. I quit holding back based on how you would receive me. I realized that even if my horrific story was something you could not relate to, I could not keep hiding and living behind a mask. To do so was just living out of fear of rejection. What would your life look like if you quit hiding and come and let people see you for who you are? The impact of being authentic has created deep, empowering, and meaningful relationships for me. Choosing to live every aspect of my life in congruence has strengthened my connections. Being completely vulnerable and not hiding my feelings or beliefs, others are able to see that I am relatable. When you are relatable, you encourage people to love you. When they love you and they can relate to you, they do not feel alone. The process of repeatedly being authentic, not just when I felt safe or understood, but about every part of my journey and every experience that I have had, has created a congruence between me and everybody around me. when I'm living in congruence to who I am and my story and my beliefs, and when I don't hold back out of fear, I am able to create an authentic connection. You'll become more alive and passionate, showing the world the real you. There will be a freedom and knowing you have nothing to hide. You will realize that you do not have to perform for connection or value. Your heart will feel at peace from being fully transparent. The pressure to try to create an authentic connection and yet still wear a mask will die. The impact of the Me Too movement is allowing people to share their stories. We must do it without questioning the validity or interrogate the truth. Otherwise, we will continue to perpetuate what we do not want. True safety comes from telling the truth, not hiding it, as Bob Hastings states, a leader and speaker on the topic of leadership. When we show up authentic, we unapologetically give others the space to accept us as we are, which encourages them to accept themselves as they are. This allows judgment to be removed, true connection to be established, and love to be born. You will encourage people to understand that the value of being yourself is worth every bit of pain that trying to do so brings. The art of authenticity is being open about your experiences, being real about the challenges, being raw about the details, and being vulnerable about how it makes you feel. Authenticity comes from a resilient ability to love and accept yourself. It allows you to embrace more of the journey from your heart and less out of fear. If there was one thing I would want you to take away from my talk today, it is this. The greatest impact you can make on the world is the moment you stop letting fear suck the life out of you and cause you to not be yourself. Be courageous to remove your mask. Vulnerably show the world the real you.